All right, let me turn my phone down before it rings, because it probably will ring. And I'm trying to make this video right quick. I want to be real. I'm going to try to be as short as possible. I'm going to stop saying I'm going to make a quick video. I'm just going to say I'm going to try to be as short as possible. Because then it turns into 30, 40, next an hour. That's not short. Even though my intention is to be like 10, 15 minutes. Then it turns into, because I'm a talker. But anyhow, I'm trying to be real quick to the point. Thanks for watching. I want to try to make a video as quick as possible. But I was watching a thing. You could probably watch it on, I guess, the Cat Williams thing inspired for a lot of people to start coming out with all the hidden things about what was happening and lies behind the scenes and so forth, as far as what's going on with their careers or whatever. So I was watching the clip, and Jody Watley finally comes out and explains what was happening. Well, what happened to the group Shalamar. But what happened to Shalamar and why they broke up is no different than 90+% of why groups break up. And so I'm naming the name of this video. So do you really want a record contract? And I know it's totally different now in 2024 than it was in the 80s, the 70s, the 90s, even the early 2000s. Record contracts are not the same, even though there's still people pursuing a record contract with like the record labels, which I totally get it, because they've been around so long. I'm talking about the ones that are still out there. They've been around so long. It's hard, because there are channels like mine, and my channel is not the only one that tell people, even though I have over 2,000 subscribers, I have some of the videos have up to 5, 6, 8, 10,000 views, if not more. So not everyone's subscribed, but one thing I was thinking about was she broke down explains it now. I'm like, oh, that explains it. So if you're not hip to what I'm talking about with Shalamar, if you don't know who Shalamar is, just Google it or YouTube it and go back and watch some YouTube videos, and you'll probably recognize some of the songs like A Night to Remember or This Love or For the Lover in You, and those songs. Those are classic 70s, 80s songs. Those are classic. Everyone probably your mom played it, or grandma played it, or someone in your family played these records. And some of that stuff was sampled. But to make a long story short, she breaks down, and what it really boiled down to is becomes between pay and contractual disagreements. And when 90% of people that wanted a record deal, including myself that wanted a record deal, didn't know all the exclusionary clauses and all the protectory clauses and all these little things in the contract that bind you to certain obligations to the contract, that gives the record labels this control of how they're going to pay you, market you, and including if you come in and you start touring, you can even use your name and decide not to come up with a stage name or group name or performance name, where that name can now become property of the record label, and now you can't even use your own name. This was what was happening when Tina Turner broke up from Ike Turner in the Ike Turner Review or whatever from the 60s, when they finally when she broke up with Ike and finally left Ike and started on her own. She said she gave up everything, but she said she's not giving up her name. Tina Turner is her birth name. She was like, I'd be dang if you gonna sit there and tell me I can't use my own birth name, even though it's her legal birth certificate name. So the clause, if you watch that and pay attention to what Jody Watley was saying, it's not so much that if you believe it's hearsay what Howard Hewitt is saying or what the other members are saying or whatever, and whatever she may say, but listen to what she was explaining in, if you watch that video about what she was breaking down in the contract. And because they had a disagreement, and I didn't know this either, Howard Hewitt apparently wanted out of his contract, and he, finally broke out with his contract. So I guess they had a thing where if you leave the group, you cannot tour or associate yourself with the name of the group to use it to your advantage to draw tickets. Because that's what happens to a lot of groups, and not just Shalimar, but a lot of groups know that when you break up as a member of a group and you think you're going to have this huge amount of success and it doesn't work out, and the group that you were with had all this success, now you realize in order for you to draw tickets, people know that group. They don't know, they don't really draw toward you as an individual by itself. They might draw to the group. It's kind of like Lakeside. Most people don't associate with, like, the singer, his name was Mark, like mine. They won't go see a show if he goes and try to market himself by his name. Because most people don't use the common, well, I ain't gonna say that, use common sense. Most people do not do thorough research to find out members of groups when they're named, when they see a group like Cameo or Confunction or Lakeside, or I can just go on a Midnight Star, Atlantic Star, and just goes on and on with all these names of groups, Intro, H-Town, or whatever. Most people don't take the time to learn every single name of every individual in the group to realize if they came out with their own whatever, that they're going to follow them, unless the only time that's not the case, where people will actually absolutely follow an artist that broke off from a group and follow them. Like, for example, Jeffrey Osborne, that was with LTD, then he broke off and blew up on his own. It's like Jody Watley blew up on her own after Shalimar. So now, because now we know Shalimar, we also know Jody Watley, just like we know Howard Hewitt. But their success have to, it's kind of like with Jeffrey Osborne became a big name without LTD, even though they had a feud in the group where he left the group. And this happens a lot. But the contracts, these are things in contracts. What I like about that video and what it explained about how they can really control your career. If they start writing all this stuff in contracts, this thing gets deep. But yeah, it's kind of like if, like, Mint Condition as an example. Let's say we already know the lead singer's name is Stokely. We call him Stokely. From Mint Condition, he sings all the leads of Mint Condition. If he tries to tour as Stokely, he would have to start creating a lot of hits on his own without Mint Condition for people to start following Stokely. If not, he has to still tour as Mint Condition, even if, let's say, the group, they all broke up and he needs that tour support and to draw ticket sales. He still got to use Mint Condition to draw, because people know Mint Condition. They don't really, even though they know Stokely as the singer, but they really, because Stokely doesn't have as many hits on the charts as Mint Condition do as a group. So that's part of one of the issues that she was explaining in the issues with what happened in Shalimar. Apparently she said that Howard Hewitt and her have a feud going on that he made up. She said he got this make-believe feud, beef, or whatever you want to call it. When it turns out, when no one ever really knew why Jody Watley would not work with Shalimar and Howard Hewitt, no one never knew, because it never came out. She finally spoke up on it. Just recently, I guess, Cat Williams gave a lot of people to start speaking up. Yeah, we all, and it's a good thing, because we all want to know what was the deal with things like with Mint Condition. Even though, this is what I've heard also. I've heard that, and I know, and I'll use High Five. Me and the producer that produced are different tastes, because High Five and at Different Tastes are from the exact same city. They have brought a couple of members outside, but the majority of everyone's from Waco, Texas. And A Different Taste is from Waco, Texas. So when I was stationed in Texas and I left and went to go up to Waco to work at the record label, that is not unheard of. But yes, he knew pretty much a lot of the members from Hi-Five because he had a record label as well and a recording studio. So when I started working with him to do the Different Taste stuff, now Hi-Five already had success from working with Teddy Riley when they went to New York and started working with Teddy Riley. But they all know each other. They know each other. They all went to the same high school. But anyhow, to make a long story short, use Hi-Five as an example. When they all started, the contracts, and when groups break up, the other members really couldn't get the amount of success that Tony Thompson had when he started working with Teddy Riley on his own. When he came up the Tony Thompson album, and he worked with Babyface and other Joe and Al B. Shore and other producers because of his success with Hi-Five as a lead singer. And I'm talking about Tony Thompson. Rest in peace. He had so a lot of times your success in a group can lead you to connections to work with other producers that work with other labels. It all can be interconnected. And that's kind of like with Andre Simone, because Jody Watley dated Andre Simone, who Andre Simone used to work with Prince in the time. That's why a lot of those sounds that you hear with like, don't you want me? Do you want me to love you? To kiss? If you listen to all those sounds is that Minnesota Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis type of things, that Andre Simone did working with Jody in her solo stuff. And that's what really excelled Jody Watley with I'm Looking for a New Love, all them little and me as a keyboard player, I do stuff like that myself as a keyboard player when I'm making music. I come up with, because I'm a keyboard player. So we as keyboard players, we use a lot of different interesting sounds on the boards to come up with these different things when we're making music. But to sum up the video, the thing gets complicated. What makes it complicated and the reason why groups is those contracts. Contracts deal with your ability to how you're going to tour, how you can make money, how much money is going to be given to the label, if there's disagreements or whatever, how they tell you, well, if you leave the group or whatever, and if you're on our contract, you can no longer not even tour under your name or whatever. This is what happened to Prince. That's why Prince put Slave, because Prince had used his name. His real name is actually Prince. So that was his name, Prince Nelson. And they said, well, because you were with Warner Brothers and you were all the success as Prince, and we had all this disagreement and they would let him out of his contract, he said, well, I'm no longer going to be called Prince. I can't even use my own name, so I'm going to be called the artist, formerly known as Prince. And he put Slave on, wrote Slave on his, meaning slave to his contract. That's how much control they can have if you get in these disagreements with these record labels, how nasty it can be. So basically, they said that Jody Watley said if she can no longer associate herself with Shalimar, which she doesn't care about associating herself with Shalimar because she has become super successful being Jody Watley, her own self. So it's like, well, I wouldn't care about being even though it's funny. I watched the video. They were doing something a few months ago. I think they were in Europe because the people had a European accent. So I think they were in the UK. And they had, so Gene, the founder of Solar Records, who founded Shalimar, said, well, he put in the clause, he put in that contract, the only person they're going to use is his daughter. Well, that's his daughter, singing in the group now. And all that's written in the contract. It's all written that way. So, it's kind of like, well, he made it kind of like, that's kind of, the way he wrote that is like, well, Jody couldn't come back if she wanted to, because he like, well, if we're going to have any singers come back to the group, it's only going to be my daughter. Because it became an animosity thing when Jody Watley left, And finally, Howard Hughes went out of his contract, but I guess he made up with Gene Griffin. I think his name is Gene Griffin, that owns Solar Records. I think he made up, so that's why he's still able to start touring as Shalamar again. But he had some disagreements as well, because I think Howard Hughes wanted to be out of his contract to do his own solo projects as well, because those record labels will make it where even if you do solo projects, they're still going to get part of your royalties and all that and the income, even though you're not using their record label or their production, their whatever. Not even sometimes they're even their studio. But this thing gets crazy. So I'm wrapping up. It's over 15 minutes. I just want to hear y'all thoughts on it. I just want to get y'all thoughts on not just the Jody Watley and Shalamar thing, but what do you think about record contracts? If you don't know about record contracts, Google and download a typical record contract agreement and read it. Some of those contracts can be 40, 50, 100 pages long. But you need to read the contracts. That's contracts control you. You may not. We used to think, man, I get a record contract, mean I get a record deal. A record deal really is technically no more than an agreement to their contract terms. We've reached a deal. Okay, I'm going to sign this deal. I agree to your terms. That's the deal. To sign this record contract to say what I can and cannot do under this label. And a lot of times, this is where 90+%, and I don't care what the genre is, it could be country and western, rock, R&B, hip hop. It doesn't matter the genre. When they were doing it under record labels, most were signing contracts that were screwing you as far as your name, your royalties, your masters, your points for payment, for record sales, who you can work with, even if you can do TV and radio interviews or radio appearances, even if you can, if your contract says we're going to get a big percentage if you appear as a guest in a movie or whatever. These record contracts are, and then how long we can own all your music. So basically, when you set a record contract, they would say we own the masters forever, or up until a certain percentage of time frame where you can even buy your masters back. Then you can start making money off the royalties. It's so many, and I'm so glad I never signed a record. I'm so glad I've never signed record contracts like that. Man, I'm glad I never signed record contracts like that, because you don't know how much they are screwing you in controlling money. So that's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Y'all have a good one.